copy. Let me know when you're. It's okay. Am I their way? Okay. Nope. Am I in your way? Got it. Returns to his normal spot. Get your spot and I'll move. That was ridiculous. shouldn't be, but you don't know.
I was, we know when I called her, I got a call
No, it's
saying,
yeah. No, I agree. I agree.
so I called
You
her.
want to see what she's going to show you? But good time.
And she wouldn't know. And you could hear basically screaming.
Yeah, you have to go to live. You can do it.
Wow.
At the same time.
Going on inside. Just hear finally it got quiet. And she blew off the back door and was screaming and yelling and just killed him, just killed him. And she didn't know what to do. She was just running back and forth. So she was just she wanted to go home.
Full. Let's go to the monitor. Yeah, they work. It's nice, huh? I've never done this, and it probably could. Probably could. Yeah, so that's what I use. That's what I use first.
Here, space here. Richard John.
You got it. And then, yeah.
Yeah, I guess you're right. You're both around here. So hopefully somebody is.
Okay, so let's have a full that's good.
Those lights are hot.
So it's something like, so it's four going out.
Yeah.
And then the other backpack with all return stuff on it, separated, so the other backpack can program.
Oh, you're actually here.
No, you know what? That was it. Yeah, so sit down, steam. It's only but if you have to modify that on iPad, I swear I say, set it back. For that.
Actually, that's my first time. I can have that right away. Like, it's working really good from this area. So I can make it look so I used to work at Bush. Yeah, okay. Yeah. It's good jump out to here. Yeah. Similar issues. Downtown Bass. Oh, okay. Nice, right. Yeah, I was like, I have to remember. Yeah, I just walked her. She wonders, do you want what's so funny?
I do a little segment that I do.
Everybody ready?
If you need to stand.
Right. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. No, he's fine. Chuck, you okay? Okay. Miracle, why don't you stand beside Steve right here? You all can come and stand with the family. Good morning. If everybody's ready to begin, we can begin. Is everybody set? I'm Attorney Ben Crump, along with Attorney Steve Wagner. We have the honor of representing the family of Ryker Earl from DeMotte, Indiana. Present with us is his broken-hearted family, standing in support to say that Ryker life mattered, that Ryker was a good person, and that Ryker was loved. And he was having a medical crisis. And Ryker should not be dead today. He should not be dead today. That's why they're here, fighting for transparency, fighting for truth, fighting for justice. Present with us, we have his mother, Dorothy Earl. We have his sister, Tara Earl. We have his grandparents who helped raise him, Connie Widener and Chuck Widener, who were present the whole time. In fact, his grandmother was the person who called 911 for help. And we also have his aunt, Miracle Galansky, who came while he was in the custody and the care of the sheriff's department and saw firsthand what happened to him in the end as he continued to say, "I can't breathe." We also have Sharon Krantz Earl, his grandmother, who will also address you about what she heard. And Tara will talk about what she heard that night. They all heard him saying, "I can't breathe." And if America learned anything in the tragic killing of George Floyd in Minneapolis, that is when a citizen says, "I can't breathe," the first time, we should believe them and we should take it seriously. And I just want to say for the record, and I want to be clear about this, it doesn't matter if the person is a black person or a white person. When they say, "I can't breathe," and end up dying in police custody, I vow that we're going to get to the truth of what happened. And I know Attorney Steve Wagner shares my conviction in this. We are going to get to the truth of what happened that led to the death of a 26-year-old father of two who needed a helping hand. He did not need to be put face down in handcuffs because he was having a seizure. This is an important case, not just to make sure we get justice for Ryker, but this is an important case because there are thousands of families out there who have family members who have seizures. And we want it to be a teachable moment. So you don't have to have a broken-hearted family saying, should I have called 911? That's what his grandmother is agonizing with. She just told Attorney Wagner and I keep having the nightmare, if I wouldn't have called 911, would he still be living? Mr. Chuck, his grandfather, who was there the whole time, a veteran, is struggling, saying, why did they treat him like they treated him? Why didn't they treat him like somebody who needed help? Why were they keeping him down in handcuffs when he kept saying, I can't breathe? You're going to hear from Attorney Wagner in just a minute, talking about when you're in the post-seizure state and all the dynamics that come into play when a person has had a seizure and then when a person is coming down from a seizure, and things that you would want people to do, that the EMS and the police, how we will want them to treat your loved one if this was them. I will say these few things and then I will have my most able co-counsel, Attorney Steve Wagner, who I've worked with on many other matters. He's not only one of the best lawyers in the state of Indiana, I think he's one of the best lawyers in America, and we together are going to fight until we get the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth about Ryker Earl dying in the custody and the care of the police. According to the Epilepsy Foundation, during a period when a person is having a seizure or coming down from a seizure, they talk about a person is easily frightened, upset, and unable to communicate effectively, and may become belligerent or aggressive, especially when approached, as he or she may perceive that this is a threat. There was no question he was having a seizure. They said a cardinal rule in the handling of any seizure is that the person should not be restrained in any way unless it is essential for his personal safety or the safety of others. Restraint of persons during or soon after a seizure may exacerbate or precipitate combativeness, the opposite of the intended result. As one's resistance to restraint increases, the threat to his life similarly increases. Restraining someone face down and or with his arms restricted behind his back is especially dangerous. The foundation also said persons who have epilepsy and a variety of other disabilities are frequently, inappropriately arrested and jailed because police officers have not received proper training in the recognition of and the aid of seizures. Miss Connie and Mr. Chuck was there the whole time, and you will hear from them, but they said for 7 years he had been having seizures, and they dealt with them just fine. He would have the seizure, he would come down as many Americans have. They would give him Gatorade, they would talk, and he was never a threat, he was never violent. They don't understand why calling 911 this time it was any different. That's why we need the video to be released. If there's nothing to hide, release the video. Release the video. You don't need to say any more. Just release the video. That's what this family wants. Transparency, truth. They need to try to heal. That comes with justice. I give you an incredible lawyer, an even better human being, Attorney Steve Wagner, who will address you before you hear from some of the family members. Steve. Thank you.
It's my honor to be standing up here with Ryker Earl's family. I appreciate so many of them coming over to support the call for justice. Also appreciate my friend Ben Crump being here. All those people who says that Ben only cares about black folk are apparently wrong. It's not the case.
Yes.
He cares about justice. He cares about anybody who suffers injustice at the hands of the police or other government actors. And that's what we're afraid happened here. People in this country should not have the fear to pick up the phone and call 911 if they have a family member who suffers from epilepsy or who suffers from autism or who suffers from some mental health issue.
Take your time.
People like Connie should not even, it shouldn't even go through their mind, should I call 911 because I'm afraid they might mistreat my family member. But that's where we are. Until first responders understand that you don't treat a seizure patient or an autistic patient or a mental health, someone in a mental health crisis as a criminal, until they understand that and respond appropriately, there will be more press conferences like this. Ryker Earl was particularly at risk that night. He had had another seizure earlier in the day that his sister Tara witnessed. In fact, the same EMTs that responded the night of the tragedy were there earlier in the day, so they knew him well. They knew his seizure history. He also had asthma. As he was fighting for his life, his grandfather was telling the EMTs and the police he has asthma, he has difficulty breathing. He's a large man, face down, handcuffed. All of these are risk factors for positional asphyxiation. But it wasn't a guess what was happening that night because Ryker was telling everybody. He was shouting over and over, "I can't breathe." In fact, so loud that people in the neighborhood heard it and came over. So loud that his sister heard it over the phone when someone called her from the scene. And the police and EMTs, according to this family, left him in that position even when they were told over and over by him he couldn't breathe. So we are here for justice. We want answers. The sheriff apparently thinks I'm gaslighting him by asking for these answers. I'm not sure he knows what gaslighting means. But we want the answers. He says he has the video and has reviewed it and that Ryker was verbalizing, but he didn't say what Ryker was verbalizing. We know what Ryker was verbalizing. He was saying he can't breathe. And we want to get some answers. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ben.
Now, Steve, thank you so much for your advocacy, too. And why should anybody be attacked for asking for the truth? That's all Steve was asking for, saying, hold on, this is what the family said happened. We need to get to the bottom of this, Sheriff. We need to get to the bottom of this. Not just for Ryker, but as his grandmother said, Connie said, Attorney Crump, we don't want this to happen to another family. Steve, thank you for your advocacy. Thank you so much, man. At this time, you will hear from his aunt, Miracle Galansky, who arrived on the scene that tragic night. Miracle.
My name is Miracle Galansky. I am Ryker's aunt. Ryker was such a good guy, such a kind soul, loving father, successful business owner, very passionate about his business. And he's no longer with us. So I'm here to fight for justice, to get answers, to get the truth. When I arrived on scene that night, Ryker was face down with handcuffs behind his back, pleading, "Help, I can't breathe." He eventually went limp. Nobody did anything. I had to beg and plead for anybody, whether it was the EMTs, police, I didn't care. Do something. He's blue. Take his pulse. He's blue. Please do something. Before an EMT acted and finally took his pulse and had realized there wasn't one. This should not have happened. They were called there for a medical purpose, and we lost him. Should not have happened.
Amen. Thank you so much. We'll get to that. Thank you so much, Miracle. At this time, we're going to hear from his grandmother who was there and her husband, Chuck. Chuck, if you can stand with her.
I was there with Ryker and that. He had had a seizure earlier at his sister's house and that. And I'd said, I'm going to go home with him. Ryker was him and his sister were the love of our lives and that. They're the only 2 grandkids that we have and that. And Ryker was such a good kid and that he would help anybody. He just, if you needed help, he was right there for you. And that we could call him up, he'd say, Grandma, just call me whenever you need anything done. Don't do anything, because he always put us in the old age group and that. So he'd say, you guys don't do anything. We'll do everything for you and that. And the only thing is I couldn't save him that night. I called 911 thinking that they were going to come and help him. They asked me to step into the bathroom, and I'm assuming that they were calling other people, because when I came out of the bathroom, because I said I'm not staying in the bathroom, and when I came out of the bathroom, the fire department was there. There was 2 ambulances there. There was police all over the place. There was probably 15 people or more, which to a person that's having a seizure and that it makes them nervous and that they don't know what's going on and that. And Ryker's had a number of seizures and that. He's never been violent. He's confused and that when he's, in the state of, coming out of seizures. He's never, and all the time we've called the ambulances and that, he has never once been violent or anything to anybody. And that day when I told him, I said, Ryker, let's get some shorts on because they're going to take you to the hospital and that. And he, instead of sitting down, he was trying to put him on standing up. And I could not see. I asked the police and the fire department if they could move the dresser and that was in the way. And they said, no, the dresser's fine. So all I could hear was them saying, you do not put your hands on a police officer, because he is trying to put his pants on, and I'm assuming that he stumbled in that. And they put him in handcuffs and put him on the floor. After he was on the floor, they started to giving him shots. My husband could tell you, I stood the whole time up by where Ryker's head was at. The kitchen is like in an L shape and that, and where the law officers were on his upper body and that. And my husband was at the waist.
Feet, down by his feet,
And he was there where they were giving the injections.
and his buttocks.
Okay, and do you want to tell them then what?
Mr. Chuck, what?
Uh,
You can feel free.
Go.
When I showed up, his hands was handcuffed behind his back. He was flat on the floor. There was 2 people on his upper body. There, a police officer on his legs. He said, I can't hold his legs, I can't hold his legs, I need somebody else on here. He gave him his, I told him, this Ryker Pa is here. And he's got bad asthma, he can't breathe. And Ryker just kept screaming, I can't breathe, I can't breathe. And they told me to get back, they'll take care of it, get away, get away. He was, when a person's coming out of a seizure, he's totally confused of what's going on. But never, ever, ever, we've been around him, multiple seizures. He's never been violent to anybody. I just don't want this to happen to somebody else. I just don't want it to happen to somebody else.
And I stood by Ryker at the top, and you could tell he was coming out of his seizures, because people that are in seizures don't talk, and that. So when he's begging for help that he cannot breathe.
He's not in a seizure no more.
He's not in the seizure no more. He's begging for his life. And he's like, Grandma, please just make him get off of me. Turn me on my side so I could breathe. And to this day, I regret calling the ambulance. I don't know if we would ever call an ambulance again, because there was never any justice for Ryker. Where were the EMTs? Why, when he's begging that he cannot breathe, why were they not up there trying to do something for him? Why was just the police there and that holding him down? There was nobody up there helping him, and he was handcuffed. There was nothing he could do.
Set him up,
Set him up, do something. Just don't just stand there, and not an EMT, nothing came up to help him or anything. And that's when Miracle and me were standing up there, and that's when they told me I had to move back out of the way because they had to bring in a gurney or a sack thing to carry him out. At this time, he had never been turned over on his side. If he was anything over on his side, it was enough that we never even noticed it. He was always flat on his stomach, just begging for help. And there was nothing that we could do. It didn't matter what we did. They just ignored us. And we don't want this to happen to somebody else, because if it happened to us, it will happen to anybody.
Thank you so much, Ms. Connie. Thank you so very much for being able to do it.
Thank you.
Steve, did you want to say something before I call Sarah? Can I have your water? Thank you. It's very important that we learn from this. It's heartbreaking listening to Chuck and Connie. There are no words. There are no words. It was a medical crisis call. He should have been treated like somebody needing help, not inflicted with a death sentence. He went unconscious that day and never regained consciousness again. At this time, you're going to hear from his little sister, Ryker Earl, and his grandmother, Sharon Earl, to talk about what they heard and who Ryker was. Sharon.
I'm Tara Earl. I'm Ryker Earl's little sister. Ryker has always been the biggest advocate for me my entire life. He was the best brother anyone could have asked for. He was always there, the first person there for me anytime I needed anything. And I'm just very sad that my son won't have an uncle. And his children don't have a father anymore. I just keep hearing in my head his screams for help that night. He was saying he couldn't breathe. He was asking for help, saying, "Get off of me, get off of me."
You heard that over the phone, right?
I heard that over the phone while my aunt wasn't even inside of the house yet. I just want justice for my brother.
Amen. Miss Sharon?
My name is Sharon Krause Earl. Ryker called me Nana. He was one of the older of many grandchildren that I have. He always helped with the little ones, took care of the little ones. We had many, many get-togethers with the grandkids, special moments. And he was my sunshine. I used to sing that to him all the time. But I want to say that my neighbor called me that evening, and he said, "I don't know what's going on at your grandson's, but there's many ambulances and police there. You might want to check it out." So I hurried up. As I was getting ready, I called my daughter Miracle, and she got there just about as I got there, a little before me. And she was already in the house. He was already screaming, "I can't breathe." And all I kept thinking was, okay, they're working on him. All of a sudden, they're all running around everywhere like they didn't know what to do. They were in the house, out of the house, grabbing equipment. They just were lost. And in the meantime, he's still screaming, you know, "I gotta breathe, I gotta breathe." Finally, Miracle come running out of the door slammed, and she's screaming at the top of her lungs, "They just killed him, they just killed him." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She ran back in the house. She ran back out. Again, "They just killed him. They just killed him." It just was the most horrific thing I've ever been through in my life. Will we ever get over this? No. Life does have to go on. But this is traumatic.
My Lord.
It shouldn't have happened.
Thank you so much, Sharon.
Sarah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tara. Heartbreaking. Heartbreaking. I just keep thinking of Connie and Chuck saying that he'd been through several seizures before, and they always handled it, and it was fine. What was different about this? That's what we have to get to the bottom of. It's about transparency. Let's make this a teachable moment to not just help justice for Ryker's family, not just to help other families who have loved ones who have seizures, but let's also make this a teachable moment for law enforcement all across America, where when somebody calls 911 and they say a loved one is having a seizure, you know how to handle it. And that is not with putting them face down in handcuffs and not rendering the proper aid to them when they say, "I can't breathe." So at this time, Attorney Wagner and I and the family, as much as they can, will try to answer some of your questions, if you have any.
I guess what was the latest communication with authorities? Was it the Jasper County Sheriff? Is that who you've been discussing with? And what have you asked for? What have they not given? Where do we stand right now?
As we understand now, there's a state investigation going on with the Indiana State Police.
Correct.
And we're asking for transparency. You know, we're not asking for anything special.
The sheriff viewed the video and described the video. We want to see it. We don't want to rely upon the sheriff's descriptions.
Yeah. the family and us are intelligent enough to be able to interpret it for ourselves. We don't need an interpreter. And if there's nothing wrong, if the officers did nothing wrong, why won't you release the video? That's the question. Why won't you release the video? If this was your grandson and your son, wouldn't you want to know what happened? That's all this family's asking for. Release the video. Transparency. Let's start the healing process. Yes, ma'am. Adrian.
About how long was he in handcuffs? You know, I mean, it probably seemed like an eternity, but approximately how many minutes was he saying that he couldn't breathe as he was handcuffed?
You know,
Half an hour, 45 minutes.
yeah, I would say,
No,
yeah.
the encounter was that long, but you said it was 10 minutes, 15 minutes maybe is the time frame you're thinking?
that he was on
That he
the,
was on the ground?
right.
Yeah.
mhm.
And what time of day did this happen again?
I called at 8:35. That's what time I called the 911 call.
At 9 p.m.?
Yes,
Eastern
PM.
Standard Time.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, did anyone in the house record anything? Did anyone pull out a cell phone?
You know what? I did not. I was there at first by myself, and who would ever think at first to do something like this?
We trusted them.
Yeah,
We trusted the
we-
professionals.
Miracle, you want to come to the mic and say what you said?
How many times?
Oh, hold on one second.
We trusted the professionals that evening. We had no doubt in our mind until it was too late.
You saw, you knew when he had stopped breathing. You saw.
Yes, I watched, yes.
And you
I
told.
was there, and I begged and pleaded for help, for them to take his pulse and do something. And it was minutes before they even acted.
Yes, sir. So, sir, you were asking the question?
Yeah, how many times had EMTs been called before for seizures and whatnot? Because obviously you were familiar with them showing up.
Over the 7 years, it's
For a while, he was having seizures, but
like every month. You almost could figure monthly in that. So over the 7 years, that a number of times and that. And he had never, ever, ever had been, and he wasn't that night either, other than the incident, and I don't know if he lost his balance or what. And it just seemed like from that point on, it was not a medical thing anymore.
They were treating him like
Why,
a criminal.
yeah, because why at any time that he was laying on the ground, why didn't any EMTs come up when he's screaming, I can't breathe, I can't breathe? Never once did an EMT or anything come up to check him to see why.
What was different about this particular seizure? Because obviously if you're familiar with seizures with epilepsy.
They called him
Because-
earlier that day.
Right, but sometimes you don't call because you know how to deal
Right,
with it. What was different about this?
because he had had one earlier that day, and he had had one right before this one,
EMT had
but
came
he
earlier.
came out of it right away, and with having one earlier, I thought, you know what, I should call the paramedics again and have him checked out and that.
They were on a heightened risk because he had already had one earlier in the day.
Right.
And that's why Grandma was over at the house. She was going to spend the night to keep an eye on him. And then when he had a more serious seizure, she called 911.
The EMT had been out earlier that day.
yes.
And I'll regret it till the day I died that I ever called anybody, because I am sure I could have took care of him better than he was treated when they got there. And there was no reason why there was 15 people at least there, why the whole fire department was there, why luckily there was a fire, so then they had to call him out, and they're like, I guess we gotta leave, and that. And there was no reason for any of this. He was totally confused, because he's confused anyway. And when you've got a house full of people and that, they just get more confused.
Was he on medication for epilepsy?
Yes.
Yes.
And that's what they talked about too. She said, we're gonna get this, because she was trying to talk to her grandson. She knew how they went through these seizure episodes. They would have Gatorade, he would take his medicine, and In fact, you want to tell Connie just about after the earlier seizure why he wanted to go home with the CPAP in there?
Right, when we left Tara's, his sisters and that, after having the seizures there, and the paramedics were called there, some of the same ones that was at his house later that night,
And there was a deputy sheriff there.
and that.
He had no problems.
That was
And,
earlier that day.
Yes,
We were that day at Tara's house.
And we said, Ryker, why don't you stay all night at our house? And he goes, no, I have to go home because I have to take my medicine. And he takes a breathing treatment, and then he sleeps with a CPAP on. And I said, that's fine. I'll go home with you. And that. So I was sitting there, and I could hear some jumping around in the room. So I went in there, and I could tell he was having one. So I took his CPAP thing off, and that, and he kind of rolled off on the side of the bed, and we just kind of sat there for a few minutes, and that. And he started, coming out of it. I went and I got him Gatorade and stuff. And he had got up. He went and got another one because he didn't notice that I had got him one. He went into the bathroom. And he said, I have another CPAP mask because I just had undone all the Velcros and everything. So he found it, and he was kind of standing in the corner. And I was talking with him. And I could tell that he was going down to having another seizure. So with him being in the corner, I stood in front of him, and he just kind of slid down. And that's when I thought, I'm going to call 911. And because of just getting over one and everything.
So the initial call was just EMTs, were the officers called
First,
later?
there was three of them, and that came in. And they told me to stay in the bathroom and close the door. They went out and they closed the door, and they left him in the room. Yes.
By himself.
When
And
they first got there.
yeah, and I'm assuming they went to call for more help. I don't know. I waited in there for a couple of minutes or so, and I came out. And they're like, you have to stay in that bathroom. I'm like, I'm not staying in the bathroom. He doesn't hurt anybody. He's just having a seizure.
Yeah.
And that's when they said, go out in the front room. And then when he came out, then he was walking, but he was totally confused. And with all these people standing around, and that's when I said, Ryker, we got to put some shorts on because they're going to take you to the hospital. He just had his undershirts on and that. And that's when he was trying to put his shorts on. This is when everything, but I could not see it because they would not move that dresser so I could see exactly. All I know is what the policeman said.
They did give him 3 separate shots of sedatives during this episode while he was down, handcuffed. And Chuck and Connie both recall seeing each of those 3 separate ones, one with a small needle, and then they got a big needle.
No, first they gave him 3 shots with the smaller one.
Okay.
And then they gave him a shot with the bigger needle and that. And then they were saying, we have gave him enough shots to put a moose down. And then they went and they got another shot, and they gave him another shot. I was the only person that I thought that heard this and that. But other people that I don't, and that, they have heard this too, that what they had said and that. And I am like, if you're doing this, why are you giving him another shot? And so then I had to move out, and that's when Miracle was still up there by him because they wanted someone to move, because they needed to bring in. They had nothing in there, no oxygen, nothing in there to work on a person that's having a seizure that's on their stomach in handcuffs.
And of course, sedatives also depress the respiratory system, so you have prone restraint, handcuffs, asthma, and sedatives.
Do we know how long between the EMT, you said 3 EMTs showed up at first, right?
Right.
How long between them arriving and then they called for the...
She is assuming.
I'm
she doesn't know.
assuming. I don't know because I waited a couple minutes and they said no, stay in there, and I said no, I'm coming out. When I came out, that's when all these people were there.
In that county, it's normal for law enforcement to respond
Exactly.
to medical emergencies, just like happened earlier in the day.
Yeah.
So that would have been a typical
Yeah,
response.
she called 911 and everybody came out. Yes,
I think just for our clarity, do you mind just giving the bullet points? 8:30, like the quick timeline. Grandma calls. 3 EMTs show up at first. They tell grandma to go into the bathroom. At some point, how many minutes?
a couple of minutes, she said.
Couple
She
minutes
came
after
out of the room.
The police arrived.
I arrived at 9:11 p.m.
Before police?
No.
No, because you.
I arrived towards the end,
So all the events occurred between 8:35 p.m. and 9:11 when.
9:15-ish,
Yeah.
we'll say.
And was there an autopsy done?
Results are pending right now. I think the toxicology results have not come back yet.
Connie, have you ever been asked to step aside or into a different room before when you've called EMTs?
No, and I don't know why, because the EMTs that came first, there was one larger guy and then 2 just smaller men. So I don't know if they were afraid of him or why they closed the door. That I'm just assuming that they thought they needed more help. But I thought, I'm not staying in there because he's never been violent.
But you know what will answer a lot of the questions is the video. The video will clear up a lot of the ambiguity. We need transparency. We need the truth. We need justice. Not just for Ryker's family. We need this for other families out there. Shame on us if this happens to another family who loved one has seizures. Shame on us. We're going to keep you all posted. We implore you all to also ask for the video to be released. It's going to come out. It's going to come out. Release the video. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, spelling of the names. Miracle, you want to spell your name? You got to get it from the microphone.